tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You are now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Herut, and we got our good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
My brother, same old same, taking it a day at a time and enjoying life. What about you, King?
Hey man, I'm on that same vibe, man. Like I said, trying to make today better than yesterday, and trying to get like you, man. Trying to get closer to my brother, man. Trying to get get some stripes.
Far behind, King. You ain't too far behind.
Indeed. But before we get too far, I want to remind you all to make sure you like, subscribe, and share this episode, share this podcast as his whole catalog with your peoples, with all your friends and everything like that, because we're trying to take this thing to the next level. Make sure you do that. And then the next thing is, this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Caliprucia Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. Big up to the patrons. Man. They always have great suggestions, ask great questions, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And we definitely appreciate everything you guys bring to the table, all your contributions and your support. But as far as us, you can find this podcast on Instagram at Cosmic Convos, Cosmic Convo. That's CosmicConvo, right? You can find us at that handle on Instagram. You can find Push It Forward at PUSHITFWD on Instagram, and you can find us at that same spelling on pushitforward.com. There you can get your chart. You can find this podcast. You can get to all the different, locations that we're, broadcasting, publishing this podcast or whatnot. So definitely check us out there. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
Hit me up via Shechem Ra on IG or Facebook, or you can get at me at calipruciaastrology@gmail.com.
Indeed, nice and sweet. You know what I'm saying? So, for all y'all who hit us up on the DMs, like, how can I get a consultation? That's how you do it. All right. Shoot them an email or whatnot. But good deal. So we finally made it, man. We're a little late this week, but we finally made it to episode 25 of season 3, the season 3 finale. Shout out to us. Indeed, man. It's episode 75. Boom. You understand what I'm saying? How you feel about that, Rob?
Man, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Who would imagine we'd be here 3 seasons later, right? From that initial conversation that we had, just to say, man, let's go ahead and get it started. It's amazing. And time flies,
Time flies when you're having fun, man.
Exactly. Right.
Indeed. Yeah, man. So this is a good milestone for us, man. And, it's only going to get better. We got some good things coming up for y'all and, season 4 jumping off and stuff like that, so we got some new things we're going to try out and stuff like that. And, we're trying out one thing here, this is actually a live episode. We do this live for the patrons. But, it's all the way live right here. So we might, toy with this, in season 4. I don't know. We'll talk about it. See how we can iron it out, or whatnot. But, just we appreciate everybody who stay tuned and keeping this thing going. All the new listeners, all our old listeners, our core, listenership and stuff like that, man. We definitely appreciate y'all listening to us and stuff like that. So we definitely look forward to being able to, be of service, even more moving towards the future for sure or whatnot. But, I don't want to talk too much or whatnot. Couple quick things on my end. Y'all see I got the poster back there, the Gentle. So we that short film is dropping very very soon, very 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 soon. I know I've been saying that for a while, but it's done. It's complete right now, and so y'all be seeing that real soon or whatnot. I'm real excited about that. Real excited for y'all to check that out or whatnot, man. Brother Rob, man, you got any announcements? Anything you want to say to people before we jump into the episode?
Um, Not particularly any announcements per se. Anything coming down the pipe. All my students kind of know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Classes that are available to them. Um, but I do want to give a shout out to give a RIP out to a phenomenal musician and rapper who passed today. They pulled him on off life support. I believe earlier today, right around sometime this afternoon. Everyone knows pretty much what I'm talking about. DMX.
Yes.
Just should send a spiritual shout out, to the brother, and definitely condolences to his family. It's a hard time when we have someone pass so suddenly, and with so much potential and so much life to live. So
Yeah.
definitely want to send
Indeed, man.
some thoughts out to folks.
Safe travels, man. Safe travels, man, to the brother DMX or whatnot, man. That's my Haru Clanny, man, or whatnot, man.
Mm,
So, man, definitely, man. Blessings to him and his family for sure. Um,
sure.
and I know y'all gonna ask. People have already asked about doing a show on him. Um, we're just looking at it. We have a chart, but we don't have a good time for him to really do it. Maybe we can do a show. If we don't ever get a good time, maybe we can do like a Chandra Lagna show or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
possibly. Or whatnot. And for those who don't know, that's when you just make the moon, wherever the moon is placed at, you make that the ascendant, and approach the chart from there or whatnot, which is something that you do anyway, as an additional to looking at it from just your traditional ascendant. So I don't know, maybe we'll explore that, but we'll see. I mean, because
Yeah, I
we had
mean, and here's the thing: even from the moon right now,
mm-hmm,
is moon's in Leo, so that
mm-hmm,
means fourth from the moon, right? K2 is in the fourth from the moon,
mm-hmm,
and the initial um, report, right? Don't know how accurate or inaccurate it is, but the consensus is that he had a heart attack,
mm-hmm,
right? And when we're looking at the moon as or the ascendant or using it from the Chandra Lagna perspective, the fourth house from the moon is also dealing with the heart. And in fact, the moon is one of the planets that secondarily governs the heart, primarily the sun, but secondarily the moon does as well. And so it's amazing how fourth from the moon, K2's transiting, and he has a sudden heart attack, from an overdose. But just showing that even from that perspective, there is still some credence to what's going on.
indeed, man, or whatnot, man. Definitely one of the best to do it on the hip hop end for sure, man. So yeah, he'll be definitely missed, man, for sure, or whatnot.
Sure.
All right, so switching gears a bit, so here with this season finale, we've touched on this, in a general fashion throughout,
Hmm.
throughout the seasons and stuff like that. Just an observation of mine. I've seen that a lot of black people are starting to get a little bit more serious into astrology. There was a time period where it just was, just a conversation piece and different things like that. But now, you see people more interested in actually learning the science. And of course, we live in the West, so a lot of people are, learning that path through the, Western astrology, tropical astrology path, right? And there also a lot of our people are, into history and stuff like that, but they don't realize that we practice a particular brand astrology, and there's a very specific reason why. How did that even come about? And this kind of sprung in my mind. We were on Clubhouse one time, got in a little mini debate with someone or whatnot, but and hopefully we can jump off the big boy, but we'll see if we can get that together. But sprung a little debate, about what ancient black civilizations, what kind of astrology, what kind of astrology they practice and stuff like that. And we're gonna begin to kind of just set the record straight a little bit on that in this episode. I think this is a good episode to leave y'all on, for this season 3 or whatnot, man. So, let's jump into it and whatnot. Hold on, I think you muted yourself.
This, my apologies. This show is not to belittle anyone's approach or practice
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
of any system or um, uh, way you would like to or choose to apply. That's your purview.
Yep.
Um, However, right, facts have to be stated, and it remains that there are two astrological signs in vogue today. And when I say two, there are some, of course, interlacing or overlapping similarities, right? Far too many to explore. But there's some stark contrasts and some stark differences that separate the two, and those differences are facilitated by observation, right?
Yeah.
You know, science is what we're talking about, and it has achieved astrology has achieved a label, right, as being considered pseudoscience, where it has no uh, there's no quote unquote ability to rectify how a body in space can verifiably affect another body in space without some type of physical interaction other than gravity.
Yeah.
And so, it's left, quote unquote, to be a tribe to the realm of pseudoscience. But let's just for a second kind of step away from that purview or that label and really look at the word science. Because, if we are practicing a science, if we're looking at something that is um, verifiable, or we can measure, right, things in regards to the science, then we need to understand that we're looking at something that is observational. And science without observation is null and void, right? So
Exactly. I
when
mean,
we begin to observe, right, to use our abilities to witness, right, and to participate in an exchange between ourselves and the forces that be, right, then you begin to have a relationship. There is a symbiotic, not exchange, but there's a amalgamation, right, that happens when you begin to witness, right, things that happen in the sky, and they literally are on the ground manifesting. So we make a connection, and that's one of our ancestors' tenets: is as above, so below.
yeah.
Well, you can only do that through observation, right? And you know, I am not saying what someone is measuring, right? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that because we can look at things from different measurements, that's clear. There's no argument there, right?
Yeah.
But what stands or remains standing is observation, right? Now everyone knows that there's that the constellations, not everyone knows, maybe if you didn't know, but you know now, not all constellations in the night sky are of an equidistant space. So that
Yeah.
means that Virgo, which is 44 degrees in the sky, takes up, it's the largest constellation, right? Right, constellation, and then of course Pisces is right after. Constellation Pisces is massive, right?
Yeah.
Virgo actually after a certain part of Virgo becomes Libra, even though the constellation itself is still Virgo. So yes, observationally, there are some things that we have to address to say, you know what, right? Yeah, we're not seeing it in that particular band, quote unquote, of what we call stars, but that's rare, and it only happens with certain constellations. Other constellations are different in
Yeah.
that you do see the planet for the most part in the backdrop or behind that backdrop of that planet. You're observationally seeing, right, that planet in that constellation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only with Virgo and only with Pisces do we really get that differentiation, and that's because Aries is so small, right?
Yeah.
So let's just establish that when you're looking at the planets in the sky, right, you're looking at them in relation to, right, not only the constellations and the stars, but also in relationship to a point that we establish as zero, right, which is called an ayanamsha.
Yeah.
And an ayanamsha is the way that sidereal astrologers determine 0 degrees Aries in order so that we can start the chart at a specific position and gain understanding of where we begin to measure. Right?
Yeah.
The difference in tropical is that they don't have a point that they start at. They pick an arbitrary, non-observational point by which to make their measurements, which is March 21st.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can't see a March 21st. That's an arbitrary manifestation. But what we can do when we use this science and we're using an ionamsha or a point in space that is determined from another point, and there are different ionamshas, there are different points that people use to make the space relative. Usually they're very close, right? So they're
Mm-hmm.
going to differ within about a degree, right? Maybe two, right? Depending.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, that small variance is really nil when you're understanding that we're using it in comparison to what's actually in the sky. We're using the stars, so to speak, to make our judgments about the placements of planets. So if we're using our eye, we're witnessing it, we're literally seeing it, right? When you come back to, right, reality, when you begin to scribe, right, or write what you've seen, you have to observe that this is the planet is in this portion of the sky, not another position, not another portion. So now, since we have some established understanding that this is an observational science, right? Observation is the key. So prior to, right, the advent of um, Western astronomy, right, slash astrology, because remember, they were sister sciences in ancient times. There was no separation.
Yeah.
There's a separation because we're dealing with it. This knowledge has been filtered through a being, right? And here we go, right? Who's third eye blind, right? And so when you're third eye blind, right, things are distorted, right? One, you see one thing and it becomes two, right? So when you see a nation, right, you see two instead of one.
Yeah.
When you see, right, when you see God, you see two instead of one, right? When you see male and female, you see two instead of one. This is the theme, right, that is being run when the type of mindset that has bequeathed to us tropical astrology, right,
Mm-hmm.
has misunderstood that there is a connection between observation, astronomy, and astrology. They're one.
Yeah.
So, when you have a being that separates church and state, male and female, right? Right? He separates parent and child, right? He separates the youth from the elderly, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the nature, right? Good book to read is Yurugu, right, by Marimba Ani. And she talks about in the book Marimba, which is a great classical read. I mean, if you call yourself any type of Afrocentered, or even wanting to explore African culture, that is an excellent book to read because she begins to change your mind about how to perceive, right, through an African lens versus a European lens. And when I say lens, the word she uses is asili, right, which is the seed, kind of the thought process behind, right, the essence behind how a group of people do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the asili, that, or the process by which, you know individuals from a colder, more darker, or less sunlit region begin to process things from a point of view where it's objectified,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that there's no interrelationship between spirit and matter, right? And so when we go down that road, there's a host of things that unfold, right, from this objectification mindset. So when we approach the science of astrology, and it is a science,
Yeah.
right? It's just like the weather, right? Right? Meteorology is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
meteorology is not a perfect science.
No, it's a probability is,
Science of
you know.
probabilities,
Yeah.
right? So what we're doing is the same thing from a different, larger framework,
Yeah.
right? Just predicting the probabilities, right? I tell my students, when we read astrology and when you learn this astrology, there's three levels, really four, but three, right? And this is when you begin to understand how confluence works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Astrology never works without a understanding the principle of confluence. So one is a seed. One A seed is something that is planted, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take root or it's going to germinate or grow. Right?
Yeah.
So, once the seed has been planted, will it germinate? Right. Well, in the chart, you can see, right, if the seed is going to germinate. Once it's germinated, we call that a possibility,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is a possibility that this will happen, right? Once that seed now has taken root and germinated and grown and rooted, now we say there is a probability, right?
You know, the truth is, and I think, a lot of people, not to get too off track, but a lot of people, question like, why do we even need to learn math or calculus or these levels of science? What you learn, right? Because my training, day training, my side full job is an engineer, right? The higher up in science and math that you go, the more and more it's probabilistic. It's no everything you do is within a probability. So that's not a foreign thing. You know what I mean? It's not exact. They teach
Mhm.
it to you that way at first so you can learn it, right? But once you start applying it to actual real life situations, it's a probability. You understand
There's
what I'm
always
saying?
variables,
Exactly.
right?
You know.
And so those variables come in the form of people taking actions, right? There's things that are beyond our cognizant understanding. There's just more to it than what we see in the sky.
Yeah.
But we can predict with a degree of accuracy
Mm-hmm.
75 to 80% of what will happen. And given that 20 to 25% of the variable, right, leaves you what you call your will,
Yeah.
right? I think we've touched on it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But When we get to the point of probability, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've come from a potential to a possible to a probable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once we get to the fourth level, right, you can pretty much put a stamp on it, right? It's gonna happen. So this is all through observation. This is not something that we do arbitrarily or we guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel solid enough by observation, right? Because then you begin to see that there's a direct connection. It's not, you know, and I don't want to say that Western or tropical doesn't, but when you begin to do it enough to where it almost is if you're watching a clock and all you're doing is just saying, you know what, I know what's going to happen at this time because this has already been set back here, right? It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
watching a ball drop. That's exactly how it is, right? You're just
Yeah.
watching something, boom, right? When we talked about earlier, right? That Mercury aspecting the moon, right? I didn't even have to, I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
I knew before I looked,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the beginnings of intuition, right? Remember, and what we study and practice, on certain levels of consciousness, right? Certain vehicles of consciousness, when we talk about destiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's married to the will of God. It's one and the same. There's no difference. One
Yeah.
side destiny, you see patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you see patterns long enough, you begin to intuit the will or the indwelling working of something moving that thing,
Yeah.
right? Then the epiphanies pop up. Boom, this is going to happen. So it's literally through observation over and over and over and over and over. And literally, when I go outside, like tonight, and it's probably what a little late your time, a couple of your hours ahead. So Mars is just set right now. Mars just set where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And still, I can go out and see it where I am right now. But Mars, you will look literally. You can go out if you're where you are is clear. You can see Mars is right at the tip of the bull's horns, right? It's right between the bull's horns, right between them. So I can go out and see it. Then when I come back in and I choose to engage something in a computer or in an ephemeris or on paper, I don't have to now it's like a clock. Now it's in my mind. Now it's automatic. And I become one with it. Now I'm actually moving with it. But that's only through observation. No tropical astrologer can do that. Now that is something I will bet I will pay you $20,000 if you can take me outside and show me what you see in tropical in the sky. You can never do it. Ever.
Well,
Right.
not to be a
Go ahead.
like again how you said it. First, we're not trying to disrespect anybody or nothing like that.
No, not
But
not at
but,
all.
no, but
Right.
but what I've heard from tropical astrologers is that that's not what they're trying to do anyway. They don't that they that's not what they're saying. Like it doesn't um what's the word? I forgot the word that they use for it, but they kind of have structured the way that they present tropical astrology in a way to make it that what's actually happening in the sky is not what they're measuring.
And I would agree.
Yeah, exactly.
And at that point, then we would digress to say what you are doing is not astrology.
It's a different thing.
It's not because when we say astrology, we're saying the logic of the stars, right? The logic of the cosmos. So if we're saying stars, I need you to show me the star you're looking at, and
Yeah.
not something that's here, right? I need you to take me outside like our ancestors did. And this is a perfect segue, right? To really
Hmm.
talk about what your ancestors did, right?
Yeah.
Remember papyrus. Remember, I want you to think about something for just a moment, right? Papyrus, paper. We take this something for granted, right? It's just paper. To us, it's just paper, right? This was a hot commodity, right? In ancient times.
Yeah.
You didn't have paper. Everyone didn't have paper, right? If you had paper, it was made first of all, right?
Yeah.
And so for it to be made, right, and then dried, and then of course that whole process where you use it, and right, it was almost sacrimony. It's almost sacred to a degree
Mm-hmm.
because you're making something out of nature to record something for all time. So even in that, it was different. But take into consideration, right? You didn't have the ability to write things frivolously. So
Yeah.
where would you keep it in your mind, right? But it's only based on the things that you would observe at night because you can't see the stars in the day. So we know that didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Right. To get the party started, someone had to say, you know what? Sit down, look up, and measure. Right.
You know, and it's one thing that like it just kind of in a something, and you tell me if this example makes sense to you. Some years ago when I was just thinking about astrology, the thing that came to me was like it's almost like the planets are like eyeballs, right? And like the constellations are like shades, like
Mm-hmm.
glasses. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
the eyeballs is looking through the glasses, and that light that's coming through the
Mm-hmm.
glasses is the impact of that actual planet being in that constellation and how it impacts you or whatnot. That's how I made sense of it. You know what I'm saying when I first kind of started studying astrology. So if you say that doesn't matter, then you understand what I'm saying? Like I don't know. It's weird to me to
Yeah.
not want to observe and be like, otherwise it doesn't make any sense at all. But
Right.
and I mean that. I mean that respectfully. I'm not like again. I mean that respectfully, but just that example or how I could explain how does a planet impact us or whatnot. That's the way that I look at it. That's the way it makes sense to me. It's like the planet is looking at you through a certain lens, and through that lens, that's a different impact. When it goes over here, it's looking through a different lens. You
Mm-hmm.
know that you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that's exactly what we say. In fact, in the vernacular that we use, we call drishti,
Mm,
right? Drishti means glance, right? So the planets have drishti, right? And so they look. Saturn has a drishti, right? Mars has
mm-hmm.
a drishti. All of them have their drishti. They have their glance,
Yeah,
right? So absolutely, they see, right? The only one that doesn't see is K2 because it's headless, right? So when they see, right, they look out, and when they
yeah,
look out, right, they can literally peer through, right, that lens of or that myriad of energy, and then as it comes through, right, it hits you. So
yeah,
absolutely, that's pretty much the way we would view it. So in that light, no pun intended, right? Right. Right. Um, then you begin to say, okay, you know what? If you can't take me outside and show me what it is that and if you're not observing that, then we're not talking about astrology anymore.
yeah,
Because then we've left the stars to do something else. And
mm-hmm.
so that is really when we can understand that this is the form of astrology that the African descendant is designed to use, right? The black man's has his own, right? And it in what we have is the originator. Everything that comes out of that, in fact, that is how the black man does things. We originated and then they carbon copied, right?
Yeah,
Right. We produce KRS, they gave us Eminem, right?
mm-hmm.
We did MC Hammer, they gave us Vanilla Ice, right? So everything we do is carbon copy, right?
Yeah,
Think about it, right?
yeah,
This is the nature of what we call culture bandits, right?
mm-hmm.
They come and swoop in, right? And even the Greeks will tell you that their gods are from Ethiopia.
Yeah,
And Hellenistic astrology is the mother of tropical, right?
Yeah.
So if Hellenistic astrology or the Hellen or right the Hellens are telling you that, hey, our gods are from over there. In fact, they even say that the gods have to go back to Ethiopia to regenerate their powers ever so often,
Yeah.
right? See, we don't read enough and study enough about history to understand that some of the things over there were yours, just borrowed, stolen, or rehashed. I mean, and that we know that. I mean, Stolen Legacy kind of pointed that out, without a doubt. But nonetheless, right, and of course, Not Out of Greece, excellent book, right? Another one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we know this. This is something that's common knowledge. So if you know that the science was borrowed, right? And the Hellenes, right, are the ones that even tell you that the Ethiopians, right, are where we get our gods from. You might want to go to the source instead of the one that borrowed it, because the carbon copy is going to give you the M&M version of the real, right, science. And the
The
other,
Eminem version.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
I want the care. I want the raw. I want the Philly version, right? I don't want the, you know what I mean? I don't want the remix. I want the original. And
Yeah.
so our ancestors really made use, right, of their internal mechanisms called the mind and the brain, right? And think about it. Observationally, we did things that at that time no other race, not even the Sumerians, who are also coined to say that they created, right, astrology, not even they could make a building or buildings that would be oriented to the actual light path of stars.
Yeah.
That, to me, that tells me who the originator is, because if you can make a building and the building will literally capture the light that comes from a star, I think that's probably the person that it engineered it, and it must have come out of that mind, right?
I mean, align it with a star at a particular time. Like it's not like on this date. Boom.
Right. I mean, the Spica, right, which is my moon star, right, is my not moon nakshatra, is born right
Cheetah.
on Spica, right, within
Yeah.
less than a minute, right.
Yeah.
That moon being right on Spica, the star Spica, is related to the goddess Manat, right, in Kemet. And so, right, they literally built a temple that would harness that light, that would come through the temple and hit the back of the temple and light the back of the temple up. See, that wasn't done anywhere else, right? A good book for you all to read if you're interested is called The Dawn of Astronomy, a study of temple worship and mythology of ancient Egypt, of the ancient Egyptians, right? An excellent book. There's been a few arguments by some European scholars, but for the most part, the study is still very solid. And that he studied the temples and how the temples were literally aligned to stars. And here's how you know we understood procession, because we didn't sit there and say, well, where'd the star go, right? We abandoned the temple when the star moved from its current position where it could imbue the temple with light. So, right, think about it from this perspective, and I want to make mention of something to you, right? When you are a melanated being, right? The relationship that you have with nature, right? Slash, right? Netter, right? Because netter is what our ancestors would have been, one of the things that we would attribute as the divine. That's one of the names we would have used. NTR and NATURE are the same word. You just remove the vowels and you're left with the consonants, the same consonants. So for
Yeah.
us, nature is God, right? And really, that's what it is, because you're a part of nature. You're not separate. So being a part of that netter, that supreme energy that's all around us, we would literally sit at the back of the temple wall where that light would imbue, right, us, and be able to hit us at a point where we use the starlight to gain inner access to inner realms and inner doors.
Mm.
Now, one of the things I'm going to read to you here, this is a study that was done, right? And what they found was there's a correlation, right, between artificial light, right, what we use, right, all around us in our buildings and homes, right, and a decreased melatonin output. And let's see what the study has found, right? So the study found that the disturbed sleep wake cycle observed in patients with hospitalization is significantly correlated with decreased melatonin levels and constant levels of light in patient care areas. Low melatonin levels are associated with depression, sadness, increased blood pressure, decreased immune function, accelerated cancer cell proliferation, and decreased free radical scavenging. Low light therapy may provide relief from constant lighting and resulting low light, low level low melatonin levels. Limited evidence suggests that starlight therapy may also assist in maintaining or restoring natural circadian rhythms. Normally, rest, activity, and sleep wake cycles are controlled by an internal circadian clock monitored by the hypothalamus, which takes its cue from the presence of light. Patients who experience circadian disturbances might be reset by low light conditions needed for starlight therapy. As for the blue green colors associated with starlight therapy, evidence suggests that the colors green and blue may further contribute to comfort as well. Green is associated with harmonizing effects and promotes relaxation and calmness. Green is also used to fight irritability and insomnia. Blue conveys to the mind a state of peace. Blue asserts restfulness and contentment. And pause. These are some of the things that are needed for deeper levels of contemplation and high levels of and deep levels of meditation. To continue, blue has been shown to slow our metabolism and heart rate and does have a calming effect. Lastly, white has protective qualities and can be quite powerful, which represents wholeness, cleanness, and purity. White also may help relieve negativity, right? So this is a study going to show that the actual starlight, right, and low light levels can reset the internal clock. Now, applying that to sick patients, right? That's one
Mm.
application. Well, invert it to someone that's healthy, right? Someone that's
Yeah.
healthy is going to get higher production of melatonin, right? And let's sidebar for a second and diverge as well. We're going to read from a book called "The African Origins of Biological Psychiatry" by Richard King, MD, right? Excellent book for you to have in your library. It does get deep into melanin. This gentleman is an actual medical doctor. He did a lot of studies on the pineal gland and calcification, and cut many cadavers open in order to see the difference between those of African descent and those of non-African descent, and showed that there was a correlation between those that were darker of us that had less calcification or no calcification, and there was only about 20 of us that were calcified, whereas with the other side of the study, those that were not of African descent or not melanated had a 80% calcification rate, and the 20% of those were not calcified. So it's a direct inversion between the two,
Yeah.
right? And so in that study, he's showing that the African, naturally, of course, now because we live in a society that's been bombarded by various things, many of us, even though we might be of a darker persuasion, still have some calcification involved. But you can decalcify yourself. There are ways. But I want to read something as far as the studies are concerned with regards to melatonin. Now, and melatonin, let me make sure you know, melatonin is a brain component. Melanin is in your skin, right? Melatonin is in your brain and other parts of the body where nerves exist. So, melatonin, right? There are higher correlates of melatonin in the brain in darker individuals than in individuals that are lighter, or considered white. So let's read this a little bit and let's talk about what the implications of having someone that is healthy, that is viable, and that understands, right, some practice of maybe spiritual science that help along the internalization process. So Dr. King writes on page 97 in the book, and I'm going to show you a little picture here. I don't know if you all can see it. If you look in the book, you'll see the picture. They have individuals. This is a comedic. This is a picture out of Tutankhamun's tomb, right? And so you can see right here, right, where the forehead is being imbued with what? Starlight, right? So reading, right, says recent discoveries by Western scientists have found that the pineal hormone melatonin produces extraordinary changes of mind in the mind. The magnitude of these changes is dependent upon the sensitivity of the individual. When melatonin was given to normal people, they experienced an increase in tranquility, sleep, or dreams. When melatonin was given to psychologically abnormal people, they experienced a return of depression or schizophrenia. Since sleep and dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, the manner in which the pineal produces chemical keys to unlock the unconscious mind should be more apparent. And this is, I want to make this key point. Most importantly, the ureus or pineal relationship to skin color is found in the pineal hormone melatonin released during darkness. Melatonin is also a hormone that controls the production of melanin, the black color in skin. With this in mind, we can perhaps have a greater appreciation for the African drawing of a black mummy moving into the black underworld of amenta or black chemicals, unlocking the doorway to the unconscious. Right. So showing, right, that your ancestors, even within the picture, right, understood that starlight, right? Not only sunlight, starlight, moonlight has a correlative effect on the inner regions of the brain, right? And that those of us that are darker persuasion, right, in ancient times, right, considering, right, are we're unlocking keys and gates, right? Here's the one to consider. The word for star in Kemet is Sabah, right? The word for door in Kemet is Sabah. And the word for teacher in Kemet is Sabah, right? So literally, we understood that doors, right, and stars are doorways, right, to unlock secrets or hidden aspects of the mind. And so, as a proud black man, right, who has been honored to be able to observe what is in the heavens and manifest on earth, you begin to understand that those meditations that our ancestors were doing back in those ancient times were that's what we were doing when we that's what we had to do in order to unlock the secrets of stars that didn't make sense when you just look at them in a night sky, but created a pattern, right, from those stars. And then over time, those same observations at night, right,
Yeah.
with no ephemeris, no paper, right, meditating on imbibing that light and gaining insight and unlocking keys, right, to the messages that were being by the via the messages that were being conveyed from starlight and from the light above that's above. So literally, this is the science of your ancestors, right? This is
Well,
how your ancestors were able to create astrology, were able to create the understandings and the inner pinnings of signs, planets, and placements, right? So, right, this is not done by and I don't want to say I don't want to be disrespectful, but from a tropical mindset, there's no way this could have been done.
one thing. I mean, you want any evidence? It exists. That contribution still exists today with the Dogons, right?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, right?
Yeah,
Perfect example,
yeah,
right?
yeah. They, I mean, they was like, how did you know this star that you can't see. We hadn't invented a telescope that can see it yet. You can't see it with the naked eye. How'd you see this so-called Sirius B? Or that well that they
And knew there
Dogon
was a
been calling.
Sirius C too.
Yeah, how? And that's factual. I mean, it's not. This is not conspiracy conjecture. It's not. I mean, it was somebody who tried to say that they you know got it from. It was ridiculous. You know what I mean? They knew
Right.
about it before they knew about it. They didn't believe them until they saw it themselves.
Yeah.
Years
And
later,
so, how
many
could you
years
know
later.
something we didn't know? Oh,
Yeah.
right. Tropical astrologers, ask yourself that. How do they know something we don't know? Right? Because this is something that this is the way it was intended to be practiced. You don't build a temple, you don't build a myrrh, all right? Right? Some people call them different names. I know them as myrrh, right? What you call pyramids, right? They're not aku, they're called myrrh, right? But the myrrh, right? How do you build a tube inside of a building, massive building that points to us not only one, four stars within, I mean, hairline precision. When you look out the shaft, the starlight is coming right back at you.
Yeah.
You don't do that with tropical. You just can't. It doesn't work. You can't see it. You'd have to, the temple will be off. Everything will be off. So again, just showing that your ancestors made sure that you understood that starlight, right, was the intended point, that we look to starlight. Sirius is a star, right? The shaft points to a star, it doesn't point to an arbitrary point in space,
Yeah.
right? Because if that's the case, then we would literally, if we use the Western map, we'd be looking at an empty space because the star is no longer there. It's 23 degrees, 24 degrees away, right? So you see what I'm saying? Like, this is when you begin to understand that your ancestors had something, right? And what we had, again, right? No disrespect, but carbon copy, right? When you
Hmm.
get a little bit of knowledge, it becomes what they say,
Dangerous.
dangerous, right?
I mean,
So,
it's the whole premise of the society that we built, right? I mean, we just they like even to this day, you know what I'm saying? When you go to certain areas, you go to black countries, there's a level of leisure we like to enjoy in regards to just it's we accomplished a lot, but we didn't do it by
mhm,
like hustle bustle hustle bustle hustle bustle. We didn't do it that way. You understand what I'm saying? We didn't
mm-mm,
want to build a society so we have to work harder. We wanted to make things easier. You understand what I'm
easier,
saying? So you
right?
can have time to observe the stars and observe how this impact this and that and that. In this society, that's what I mean. That's one of the biggest gripes that people say. Like, I don't have time to do any of that. I gotta pay this and pay that. I don't have time to observe these things, and that's a clear distinction. We didn't build societies that way. To where you had to be. There was a season where you probably did work a little harder than that, but there was other seasons where you pretty much relaxing. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm,
Or whatnot.
mhm,
So that's another evidence point. That if you study history of Europeans, they've always built societies that are similar to kind of how we function today. Some
mhm.
level, I mean, there's differences, but there's some level of that the capitalistic mindset is there.
Control,
Yeah,
and control is bred out of fear, right?
yeah,
So it's right, fear based, right? Because you know, if you're constantly on living on a borrowed time, right? Remember, you could go out and wasn't nothing to get food, right? The Nile would, you drop a seed, right? Boop, right? It's gone. It's growing, right?
yeah,
I mean, the fertility of the land, right? And remember, the alluvial soil of the Nile has shrunk, right? It's gotten narrower. So it used to be a lot wider.
yeah.
right? So I mean, and this is just the Nile Valley. We've got Uganda, we've got the Congo, we've got, I mean, all that through that region in where the Great Lakes are is like paradise. You know, you drop a seed, it grows. Nothing. You don't have to do any real hard planting and harvesting. I mean, that
Yeah.
comes later. But even with the Nile, you're still so fertile, right? You really didn't have to. You just tilled the land, you dropped it in, you kept it pushing, and you had food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Compare that to the opposite, where you got to get a potato, you might find a carrot, right?
Mm.
Maybe a beet, right?
Yeah.
Nothing green, right?
Yeah. I
No
mean,
fruit. You see what I'm saying? The mindset, right? So, yeah, who cares about those stars? Whatever, star smarts, right?
yeah.
What's on this paper, right?
Gotta get this paper.
Yeah, got to get that. And look, it's all about the paper, right? And the paper, right? I'm not saying, right? The
Yeah.
night of the sky is black and the paper is, what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
go figure. Right.
Indeed. 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 Well, you know, with that being said, this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Calipurusha Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. Big up to y'all. Indeed, man. I think that was an excellent episode or whatnot, man. And and like I said, man, this show's for everybody. Tropical astrologers, white, black, Indian. It's for everybody or whatnot. But we are black people, and we just, this is our view. This is what we bring to the table. That's a little different than some of the other people out there. It's not a lot of. I think honestly, I know two other prominent black sidereal astrologers or whatnot. And big up to them, man. Big up to Darren and the People's Oracle. They're big up to them or whatnot, man, or whatnot. But those are the only other two prominent black sidereal astrologers. And then there's a lot of different, tropical ones or whatnot. But that's why we approach the subject that way. You understand what I'm saying? We talk about, ancient black history and different things like that because that's our culture. You know what I'm saying? It was not trying to exclude anybody or disrespect anybody or nothing like that. But we just want to, make that clear or whatnot. So, this is for everybody or whatnot. So, here we are. We wrapping up season 3 or whatnot. We'll probably take maybe a week or something like that off or something like that, get planned up and stuff like that. And, those of y'all who are in the Patreon, hit us up. I really, really want y'all to hit us up. Give us some show ideas, some things that you want to see next season and stuff like that. Even some formatting things, one of our patrons is the reason why we play the intro song at the end now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was a suggestion. So we included it. So that's why I said, we want this show to be interactive. We want you to, be a part of it and, help us make it better. You understand what I'm saying? Or whatnot. So, Rod, you got anything you want to say before we officially close out?
No, it's been a great season. It's been great suggestions, great questions, a lot of things that we really learned throughout this season. So things are going to get better next season. We're really looking to get some big stuff going on. Hopefully, have some names that you all will really be like, wow, this is special. So be looking forward to next season because it's just going to get better, folks, right? And go back and listen to the old shows, right? Go back and check them out because a lot of the things that we talk about now we mentioned previously. So, definitely don't sleep on the old ones. And with that, just say thank you for the support, the patronage, and we look forward to bigger and better things.
Indeed. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. This has been the season finale for season 3 or whatnot, episode 75 overall. And, you guys be safe out there and we'll be back season 4. All right. So we're out.
Peace.
Peace.